ANEC Sports presents a Frick Media Productions, created by the founder and editor at the ANEC Network, Sam Frick. Now it's time to know your volleyball. Welcome to a sectional edition of Know Your Volleyball. My name is Sam Frick, and I'm here with Joe Northern of SummitCitySports.com as we get things ready for the postseason of girls volleyball here. So, Joe, as we approach the postseason play, we are seeing some conference champions being crowned. I know and the SAC just got crowned this week, if I recall, between Wayner and Concordia. West Noble just won the NECC. Warsaw won the NLC. Belmont's about to wrap up the Northeast 8. Jay County won the ACAC last week, and then Southwood officially won the TRC. Are there any surprises coming out of the regular season?
I think the fact that the regular season feels like it just went by so quick is the biggest surprise. But I think really, some of the surprises I've noticed too are teams that didn't finish at the top of the table that have really done a good job of getting back, really back into prominence, I feel like. One of which I take a look at the NE8. Obviously, yes, Belmont has won that time and time again, despite losing Alyssa Gumbel to start the season. What Coach Kroll and company has done to really, stay at that top, keep that streak going is good, and had to fend off two really resurgent teams in the meantime as well, with Norwell and East Noble, both teams that could potentially make a little bit of noise in their respective sectionals. So not the surprise that Belmont won the sectional, but how they won it, again, with some of those teams kind of charging up the middle. Jay County, not who I would have picked to win the ACAC at first this season. If you would have asked me beginning of the year, I would have said Woodland or South Adams. But again, credit to the folks down in Portland for taking home a conference title, and going to be excited to see what run they can go on too as we get into sectional play next week. No surprise for Warsaw. I think everybody kind of knew that was coming with the talent that they've had consistently. West Noble, again, a team that had never been on our airwaves until last week. And they said, wait a second, people actually want to know more about this Charger program. And I said, yes, you guys are that good. You deserve that spotlight. So I think West Noble and the great run that they've had, and specifically through the young attackers too, just really good to see the NECC win on that one. Other than that, SAC, no surprise of Bishop Dwenger winning that one. We had that game last night on the network, but how they won that game, I think, was even more surprising, of rattling off 18 out of 19 points going in from the end of set one, finish set one over Concordia, rattling off 9 in a row, down by 5, and then really didn't look back from there, winning that in straight sets. So I think it's possible too that lower half of that Concordia sectional could be the way of how that one will shake out. But of course, Mr. Frick, we've got a lot to talk about. Let's get into it.
That indeed. We'll talk a little bit more about these teams as we get to the other sectionals. I'm just going ahead and briefly just get past 1A55 because, let's be honest, I think North Miami's pretty big favorites in that sectional, all things considered.
Yeah.
But 1A52, I think, is an interesting sectional for Class 1A. Fremont won that sectional last year for the first time ever. They graduated a lot from that team, including Claire Folk, who's at St. Francis on the volleyball team, and Addie Parr. But when you look at this year's teams, Canterbury's won around 15 games going into this week. Lakewood Park not too far behind, around 14 wins. It's been 5 years since Lakewood Park has last won the sectional, and they are the hosts this year. And the last time these two teams met, they were they met in a 5-set thriller, Lakewood Park winning that match. Do you see one of those two teams coming out in the sectional? Because I do think it's going to come down to those two.
I think it will likely come down to those two. I mean, again, the thing with sectionals, if you have a good draw that's going to best benefit your route to move forward, throw records out the window, throw your opposition out the window, take a look at what you've done before, quite frankly. So I would say Lakewood Park certainly has a great chance to come out of this one, but a Canterbury team that quite simply has been a little resurgent as of late this season. So I wouldn't be surprised if we saw a late push from them coming into this one in sectional 52. I think it will come down to one of those two, but I think if it does, it would be a coin flip, quite frankly.
Yeah, and these two teams are drew up in separate parts of the sectional, so they could meet in the championship game as we speak.
Absolutely.
2A sectional number 38 at Wabash. I just want to briefly touch through that sectional because we It's been great seasons for Manchester and Oak Hill and Wabash, but I think all things considered, this is Southwood's sectional to win, led by Shania Ramey, the Kentucky commits.
Absolutely. And I think, as you mentioned, a lot of great teams here in this sectional. But again, too, you take a look at that opening game that Southwood will have against Manchester. I think if that one is a little bit closer than you think, that either A is going to give Southwood a little bit more minute to move forward, or Manchester going to try to find a way to run the table. So kind of one of those. As I take a look at the bracket, whoever wins that game on Tuesday night, I think is going to have that inside track quite simply. But again, I think, Wabash could make a little bit of a sneaky run. I mean, they would have to get past Oak Hill in that semifinal should those two advance. But I think, again, Southwood too good at this point. So I would say that winner of Manchester Southwood, in my eyes, probably going to get the win here in the sectional. But again, I wouldn't rule out if you got a late surge from Oak Hill or Wabash. But if I had to be a betting man, Southwood.
Yeah, Oak Hill's got some size, led by Daly and Cates. Wabash has Briley Boggs, is a really good hitter for Wabash. But at the end of the day, Southwood's really dominant. They have basically in their entire sectional, they have swept everybody in that entire sectional field, and they just won their 5th straight TRC championship. It's their 32nd overall for Southwood. So powerful program at Southwood. Sectional 36 is South Adams. This is a sectional that's going to be very competitive because when you look at this sectional, solid Adams Central team that graduated quite a bit from last year, still pretty good team there. Whitco, I think, is a sleeper in this sectional as well. Blackhawk with 12 wins, pretty solid team. I think the record doesn't really tell you a lot about Blackhawk, but I think when you look at this sectional, all eyes are on South Adams and Woodland. These two met last year in the championship game in the sectional. It went to 5 sets with Woodland winning that championship, going to the Final Four last year. This year, Woodland swept South Adams in the regular season, both in the conference tournament and in the regular season play. When you look at this sectional, do you still like Woodland coming out of this sectional led by Alyssa Anderson and the talent they have there? Do you think Reagan Bollenbacher and South Adams may get some revenge? It's hard to beat the same team 3 times.
Yeah, it is hard to beat the same team 3 times. There's no doubt about it. And of course, having that down at Bern, too, is only going to give a little bit more motivation for Bollenbacher and company. But I think also, too, one thing to note, when I take a look at the competition you have played in some of the big game situations, South Adams hasn't really moved the needle that much for me, unfortunately. I go back, I look at a 3-2 loss to Heritage back on September 18th. I look at the 2 Woodland losses, 2-1 in conference tournament, and then 3-1 in that regular season play. 3-1 loss to Belmont, 3-1 loss to Norwell. Like, I mean, yes, they are larger schools, but the way that you have to really kind of approach it is, again, how can you size up versus what you have really your normal level of competition in that league? And if they haven't been able to move the needle on one side versus another, it's really hard for me to push the Starfire to that title. I do think, however, whoever taking a look at that bracket, again, I would say, yes, we could very well be headed towards a Woodland South Adams semifinal potentially. I mean, I think, too, taking a look with Whitco, they should take care of Bishop Lurs or Bluffton, whoever comes out of that one personally. But I think whoever's going to come out of that semifinal is going to be on the inside track to go to the final. But again, Whitco, a really, really good sleeper team, as you mentioned, 12-13. I mean, again, it's going to come down to that bottom half of the bracket, but I like what I've seen from Meredith Heinbaugh this season too. So I think this one, if Whitco gets hot, look out. But I think also too, Blackhawk Christian, they're a team that you said doesn't look like their record. They play a lot stronger, especially too on their front lines. I love what I've seen from their outside hitting this season through the couple of games we've had on board. Adams Central, again, a team that lost a lot of seniors, but rebounded, rebuilt quite well. I think it is going to be a juggernaut in that opening round next Thursday night. But I think whoever comes out of that 1 p.m. game on Saturday is going to have a really good inside track moving forward.
Yeah, and Blackhawk drew South Adams in the first round of sectional, so that could be a game to keep an eye on in that sectional if there's an upset early on. Going to sectional 35 is the all NECC sweepstakes at Central Noble. This sectional is hard because normally in past years, there's usually one team that's a favorite in the sectional. This year, it's a lot tougher sectional to predict here. I think Lakeland is good, but not as good as last year, even though they do return some kids back. Eastside, 15 wins, their most successful season in over a decade. And then you got Central Noble at 7 wins, or getting a little hot and going into the playoffs. And then Westview, led by Chloe Yoder, who just recorded her 1,000th career kill for the Westview Warriors. Big opportunity against Cherubusco in the first round. It was a rebuilding Busco team, but scrappy team led by Michaela Reuter, their setter. But Westview is going to have to go through East Side if they're going to have an opportunity to play for the sectional championship. Who do you see coming out of this sectional? Because it's always difficult to predict the sectional where everybody competes in the same conference and there's not that one clear-cut winner here.
I love how you called it the NECC sweepstakes, because I can't recall a sectional that we've seen just about everybody in the same league playing against each other. So maybe that should be some alternative branding. I digress. I really like what I've seen from Eastside too. Again, their best year that they've had in quite a long time. And again, just, I don't know, when you have that momentum, you feel like, all right, do we have a little bit of a team of destiny thing going on, despite finishing 7th in the NECC, go figure. But they've been, the one thing that does concern me a little bit, though, is that they've lost 4 out of their last 5. Again, a very tough 4 out of the last 5, losing to Angola in straight sets, West Noble in straight sets, Westview in straight sets, and Lakeland in a 3-1 affair. So I think having that kind of late stretch to end the regular season could benefit the Blazers, but I still like Lakeland's chances in this one, just because they've been tried, they've been tested, they've been on a little bit of a run as of late too. They've won opposite, we should say. They've won 4 out of their last 5. Eastside losing 4 of their last 5. But I think, again, the levels of competition can be skewed if you take a look at it. So I would say it wouldn't surprise me if we did see Westview upset the Blazers and head to the final, but I think Lakeland's got the easier track to get the W here.
Yeah, I'm going on a limb and say it's going to be one of those 2 LaGrange schools is going to make it to the regionals. I like Westview quite a bit the past couple of years, so I think it's going to be Lakeland and Westview. And it wouldn't shock me at all. It wouldn't shock me at all if Lakeland advances to regionals once again. Take a look at 3A, and I want to briefly mention 3A24 because of Jay County, but a lot of these teams in the sectional we don't talk a lot about because a lot of these schools are in different areas of the state. But this is a sectional that's always difficult because of the competition these schools play. Delta's a Muncie school, so you know what to expect with Delta. Newcastle plays in a hard conference, same conference as Delta. And Newcastle beat Jay County in the regular season. Hamilton Heights flirting around top 10 in 3A as well. But Jay County has 16 wins going into this week. They just won the ACAC. Paisley Fugit is a really good setter for Jay County. Hallie Schwieman's a really good hitter for the Patriots. They're also a pretty athletic team as well, but they're going to be tested going into this sectional. But if I have to take a good guess who maybe comes out of this sectional right now, Joe, I think Hamilton Heights may have the edge here.
I think they do too. I mean, again, this is a tough sectional that we don't get a chance to see a bunch of these teams that often. You kind of have to rely again on the film. You have to rely on strength of schedule, strength of record overall. And I think Hamilton Heights does have the good inside track. Now, that being said, I wouldn't be surprised if Jay County made it to that final game and took care of Connorsville in their semifinal round, because again, both of these 2 teams, you just got to play two games one day. That's a lot different than trying to ride that mentality and stretch it out over 3 days, 5 days, potentially. So I think really I'm in the mindset of the less games you have to play, and if you're just hot on that specific day, anything can happen, quite simply. So I would say in the case of this one, it's going to be who's going to have the hotter first game. That would really help me decide, all right, we're going to lean towards this direction or this direction. So I would say if Jay County just steamrolls Connorsville in straight sets and in double-digit fashion, then maybe that Hamilton Heights game is a little bit closer than what we expect. But I agree. I think Hamilton Heights certainly a lot more to lose than a lot more to gain.
And that's what I want to mention real quick is that with these semifinals and the finals being played on the same day, that how you get through those semifinal games really going to determine how that championship game is going to play out. Because if it's a 5-set thriller and it's really close, it could make the championship game much harder to prepare for because of that fatigue factor in there as well. Sectional 22 at New Haven. And this is a sectional that's pretty top heavy, I think. I think to me, just like last year, I think it's going to bow down to Heritage and Norwell once again. These 2 have really been battling each other the last few years. It's been 5 sets consistently across the board the last couple of years, and Heritage just won their first sectional last year in several years against Norwell in a 5-set thriller. It was at Norwell last year. This year, it's at New Haven. Heritage won the regular season meeting this year against Norwell. Does Norwell get revenge this year, or does Heritage continue their run this year?
I mean, honestly, I think it's going to come down to exactly as you mentioned, 5 sets yet again, because again, just both of these teams play very similar styles, both very height heavy up front on the front swings. I think also to Norwell, they have a little bit more of an edge, I think, in the setting and the assist game versus Heritage. But Heritage, when you get the frontline swingers going, it's tough. It's tough. So I would say, and I hate to choose one team or another between these two, just because they're both so good and they're both so athletic. Um, and it's hard for me to choose that. We will have that sectional, by the way, on Saturday. We'll have those semifinals and the final on IHSAATV.org. But if I had to choose, I would say Heritage has the inside track just because the quality of wins I've seen throughout for the Patriots this season mounts up a little bit more than what I've seen from Norwell. But again, Norwell, a very senior heavy team, they may be like, hey, why not us? Why don't we get a chance to host a regional next week? Because keep in mind, Norwell is a regional site, and there could be a chance they could play it at home. And there's nothing more that they would love to do than to play it at home. I think Heritage has a little bit of the edge, but I wouldn't be disappointed if Norwell advanced.
One thing to know for Norwell is quite a few of those girls on the Norwell team won the girls basketball state championship. So they know what it takes to
Yes,
win in the playoffs. Vanessa Rossworm, Macy Solfrank, and I think Emma Bashan in the back row. I think that could be a difference maker if it comes down to 5 sets.
absolutely. And again, just you mentioned obviously the basketball factor into it. I think again, we talk about players that do have those multi-sport opportunities. You get to see that more at schools like a Norwell. You get to see that more at a Heritage. You don't see that as much in the Fort Wayne schools. You do every now and again. But I think again, those schools and players and teams that have opportunities to double up and just consistently perform at a higher level, I think those certainly make the more interesting matchup. So Heritage Norwell, I think, is going to be probably, if that does happen to be, of course, you never know what can happen with Ole Miss. They could sneak out of nowhere, but I do think too, it's very possible that a Heritage Norwell final is what we are looking forward to and anticipating. And I hope it's a good show.
Yes, indeed. Sectional 20 at Wawasee. It's a hardwood TP at Wawasee. The two teams we really want to highlight for sure. West Noble, the NECC champions, won 23 games so far, as I know. And then Northwood, not as good of a Northwood team this year as last year, but it's a battle-tested Northwood team and a team that took West Noble to 4 sets in the regular season. Now, Northwood did draw Columbia City in the sectional, and I think that would be something to keep an eye on because I think Columbia City is a better team than what that record would show you. But Northwood's a battle-tested team out of the NOC. I think it's going to come down to we're probably going to look at a crash course, barring any upsets, a crash course between West Noble and Northwood. I think that's the one that decides the section. But man, first conference championships 2016. Now you got the NECC tournament coming up. West Noble has not won a sectional since 2018. They got a sophomore heavy team in West Noble. Do they get it done this year?
Yes, I think they do quite simply because they've been just a battle tested team that has answered just about every call that you can imagine, taking a look through the regular season. And the only 2 losses that they've had, one of those happened to be avenged in 3 sets. We take a look at the Northridge loss in an earlier tournament on the 23rd. They come back a week later, win that 3-1. The only other loss, a 2-1 affair to Warsaw. I mean, I think that kind of tells you something a little bit of what this West Noble team is certainly capable of. Elise Mead, again, just a dynamite sophomore, 5.5 kills per set, leading in hitting percentage. Ava DeLong, a great middle blocker or a middle hitter, I should say, who's just done a great job with the blocks. We had a chance to see them last week against Churubusco. But I think, again, it's the sophomores that really shine. Not to say that the juniors don't shine for this team, but it's really, for me, I look at Elise Mead and Ava DeLong as 2 really key components for this Charger team. And I think, yes, again, Northwood, one of the more dominant battle-tested programs in the region, but I do kind of find it hard to see a world where we don't see West Noble making a pretty deep run. And since they have a pretty favorable route to not only take a sectional, but maybe get a regional win or 2 in the meantime, I think, it's time to fire up the horses. It's Charger time, I think, for West Noble.
Clever line there. One thing I want to know for Northwood is Ella Bram's a really good hitter for the Northwood Panthers. Emily Uma is a solid player in the back row as well. So they do have some talent in Northwood. They're just not as deep as they were in the past, especially when they had Claire Payne, who's now in the SEC in South Carolina, if I recall. So Northwood's good. They're just not at the level of West Snowball this year. And I think that's where I think the Chargers have the edge here. I actually skipped sectional 21 for a good reason, and that's to talk about the Concordia sectional. This one I know you definitely have experience talking about. We'll get your points in just a minute, but you got Angola, Dwayne, Concordia, East Snowball, and Garrett. Leo's kind of a sneaky team in that field as well, but it's a very deep sectional. Angola, we know they made the state last year in 3A, but I think they're a little bit younger this year. Besides that, Maya Harris is back for her senior year, probably the best outside hitter in the entire sectional. Dwayne just won the SAC. Concordia's got some talent. They just finished runner-up to Dwayne in the SAC. East Snowball's having a great season, led by Kylie Walls in the libero position. And then Garrett, they're having a great season of their own with a lot of freshmen and sophomores contributing for Garrett. And Amelia Kosturki coming in to Garrett, making a big contribution for the Railroaders as well. But Joe, I think when you look at this sectional, this is probably the most competitive sectional that we've covered at this point.
Yes. I don't know how I'm going to have a voice after the sectional. I will be at this one next week for the network. But I can tell you with good reason. This is a very loaded sectional because not only, but really not loaded in the sense of, yes, you have Angola, you have Bishop Dwenger, and you have Concordia. But the other teams that you don't really see a chance that have done well, or at least overperformed in the best way. I look at East Noble, a program that's rebounded with a bunch of seniors on the board, had some quality wins, and yes, they lost 3-1 to Belmont. That's the first time East Noble's won a set against Belmont in nearly a decade. So I think they certainly have a lot going on up in Kindleville. I think it will be a tougher match taking on Angola again, but also too in really in speaking with their coaching staff earlier on the season, they've had to really make some adjustments in terms of how they handle the rotations. I know for one, they moved Holman into a little bit of a setter position at one point in the season. Harris, again, as you know, just continuing to dominate on the kills, but I think they haven't been afraid to try different things this season for Angola. And some of it works out really well. Some of it hasn't. I mean, still 19-6, a very battle-tested team, finishing second in the NECC behind West Noble. I would say it is certainly possible that Angola can really try to find the edge. I mean, early on in the season, if you would have told me who's going to win the sectional, I'll be like, okay, well, I think Angola because the experience, Angola because of their outside hitters. But again, of trying different things over and over and over, and seeing some other teams really be resurgent in their own rights, this one is going to be just quite simply pull straws. Whoever wins, good luck. I think the Leo Garrett game is going to be a lot closer than you think. Leo obviously having a down year, but also to a tougher schedule than anybody. I should say that in that sectional. So again, Coach Ashley Robbins still finds a way to reload and get her team ready to go. And I think that game with Garrett's going to be a lot closer than you think. Not to say that the Railroaders haven't had a great season either. Not many people have seen Garrett this much. But I think, too, once we take a look at that strength of facing on against some battle-tested teams, we'll see, okay, was this a fluke or are the Railroaders for real? We'll see that on Tuesday night. Bishop Dwenger, I don't think we'll have an issue with DeKalb personally. I love what I've seen from the Saints the past couple of weeks. Especially in Nicolette Watercutter, who's absolutely dominant on the right side. But also, too, they had some sneaky blockers on the win over Concordia. Kobe Johnson, a really underrated, under-the-radar player for Coach Boren and company. And Braylon Hodgman, just my goodness, get you a player who can find a great set and a great swing on the left side. It's a Dwenger team that I feel like if everything can go the right way for them, they could find a way to be back on a collision course with the K-Dats. And again, a Concordia team that's had to rebound a little bit, but a very young Concordia team. And of course, shout out to Coach Trish Miller for helping her cadets rattle off 9 out of 11 in the light month of September. But I think too, it just depends on how can opponents stop two dominant forces. Sydney Blackwell, who's just an absolute flamethrower when it comes to the swings, but also to Kavea Turner, who is far and away the block leader in the 260 at the moment, 77 as it stands right now. And a younger freshman, Shelby Peterson, who's dominant on the swings, averaging 2.5 kills per set and about 30 blocks on the season coming into last night's game. So I think there's a gut that tells me we are headed for a collision course. I think Concordia Lutheran finds a way to get in the final. Of course, this being at the cage, home court advantage could play a factor. But I also take a look, too, to see if Angola and Bishop Dwenger goes by the way of when these first two teams met earlier in the season. Angola certainly has a good chance to be on the inside track. But if it's Bishop Dwenger, I think it's possible that they could do what they did last night against Concordia, run the table rather quickly. But again, this is a Concordia team that swept Angola earlier this season too. So I think if you had to pick one of those three, you're going to have a fun time no matter what. I also think too, it's going to be probably the toughest sectional to pick because, again, Concordia, they got the bye. They only have to play 2 games to go to a regional. And I think knowing that motivation could play a little bit of a different factor versus, of course, an Angola team, which will have a tough one against East Noble. Bishop Dwenger, I think, if you finish the job quickly against DeKalb, you come in maybe a little more lax, a little more loose, ready to go for Saturday. I don't think that'll be the case, but we have seen that in cases where favorites find a way, to get the job done in an early game, but then just flutter out in a semifinal unexpectedly. So I don't want that to happen for anybody. I think this is the hardest sectional to pick. And I'm not going to pick one because I'll be on the call for that. So.
Yeah, I'm not going to bother trying to make that call as well because that is a hard sectional to predict. I mean, I think any of those 3 teams could easily win that sectional. But one thing I want to note real quick before we move on to 4A, since 2019 when Angola won their first sectional over 20 years, Angola's won this in all but one season. One season they did not win it. It was, I believe it was Bishop Dwenger, and they won a state championship. So just something to note there for did you have something in mind?
No. I was just saying that was the one, the 2020 season that Dwenger took care of business above Angola. And obviously we knew what happened then. So.
Right. So now let's go ahead and shift over to 4A. I want to just go very quick on 4A Sectional 5 at Northside. Carroll is 28-0. They're the defending state champions in Class 4A. And I saw a match perhaps they're ranked 7th nationally, if I recall. So Carroll's having an amazing season. They returned everybody back, almost everybody back, basically, from last year's team. Let's be honest. This is Carroll's sectional.
I'm not going to call the Carroll Invitational, if you will, honestly. I mean, it's just, again, and of course, that's credit to Coach Pandy Sinush and company for just continuing to dominate every single match, not even dropping a set. Not at all. I think, if they can find a way to continue to keep that route going, it'll be one of the great seasons and great stories that I think we've seen. It already has been here in 2025, no doubt about it. I think, too, we'll look to see if that regular season sweep and run continues since Carroll's actually got 2 more games coming up on Saturday. Well, they have the Angola game tomorrow night. We're taping this on a Wednesday, by the way, in case you're listening. And then Saturday, the 2 games with Fishers and Roncalli. But I don't see that being terribly an issue for the Chargers.
Yeah, the only question I would have for Carroll is more about beyond sectionals is as you get further on the state tournament, when you start playing the high quality teams, that's where it could be a challenge for Carroll. But I think in the sectional, all due respect to the teams at sectional, I think Carroll's got this taken care of. Sectional 6 at Belmont at the TP in Decatur. I think the matchup we're really going to focus on is the Homestead matchup. To me, that's the game that determines the sectional. Homestead beat Belmont in the regular season. They ended their sectional streak last year in sectional play. And once again, this year, these two meet again to open sectional play. Does Homestead repeat their success, or do you think maybe Mary Kate Scheinman Belmont maybe makes this interesting?
I think Scheinman can definitely find a way to make it interesting. If we talk about Maya Harris being player number 1 in the region, I have to say Scheinman is up there at a 2 or 3 spot. Of course, a few players from Carroll I would rank up there as well. But I don't think there's anyone who's been more the heart and soul of a team than Mary Kate Scheinman this season. But of course, she's got some great people in the back to help her out. Kaylee Coulter, Sutton's done a great job too. Bree Schoaf. I think, Belmont, they've got a lot of good pieces that work their way, and they are battle tested for the postseason. That being said, I really, really like what I've seen from Coach Huntsclaw and company of Homestead. And again, just the way that they have a bunch of different players, but also too, they don't take themselves too seriously, which is something that I've really grown to appreciate about this team. As they're like, all right, take a loss, move on, go on from there. And I think too, last night they made it a little interesting with Woodland, but eventually winning that one in 3 straight. I think it's just going to come down to those big swingers up front. Savannah Walker, a leading middle hitter who's going to be playing at the higher level next season. Kaya Nelson, also another commit. Reagan Lyons as well. But I think too, you have senior leaders on this team led by Walker, but I think Lyons and Tyndall and Nelson are certainly making this their team. And I think too, this could set up rather nicely for Homestead to get another win or two, at least in sectional, potentially regional play. I think the question is, if they continue to go far, how long will it take before something goes wrong, unfortunately, or if they battle against Carroll for the 4th time this season.
Yep, I agree wholeheartedly. So, which now leads us to our last section, which we're going to talk about sectional 4 at Warsaw, because they have the Warsaw Tigers. This is an interesting sectional because obviously Warsaw's the favorite on paper with what we've seen from CC Good and Ellie Hepler, the Indiana commit. They have a really nice ball club, a good senior class, but they got some underclassmen at Warsaw. They're kind of building their way up, and there's a sense of a future being placed with the Warsaw Tigers. They just dominated the Northern Lights Conference, but Northridge is a solid team. We got to give Northridge some love. They're led by Izzy Melvin, who recorded, I think it was 1,000 career assists earlier this season as well. And then you got and then you got Concord that's right in the top half of the conference in the NLC. And then you got this Elkhart team from the NIC, 21-9 senior heavy team. Well, mostly it's an upper class heavy team led by Riley Drummond, Shania Stout, Ava Pollock. Nice ball club at Elkhart, but I think all things considered, the host Warsaw Tigers are going to be favored once again in the sectional, and they're going to be a team that I think if Warsaw gets past their sectional, I think they're going to be a team to keep an eye on the 4A state tournaments.
Absolutely. And I think, too, we just need to see how well that they're going to match up against some of these NLC opponents, which, of course, we've seen that this season, and they've answered the call rightfully so. But again, I think if Warsaw, the big thing for me is that if they can find a way to make a big statement early on in these sectionals and in regional play, that'll certainly make things interesting. And from what I looked at least bracket wise, they do have a pretty good route to at least try to get to a semi-state round. So I think the pairing of not only the sectional that they're in, but also the region that they're in really sets up nicely for Warsaw above anybody, I would think. But again, once you get past sectionals, you get to your regional rounds. That's when things get a little murkier. And as we mentioned back in September, nothing guaranteed in 4A, nothing guaranteed at all in any class, quite frankly. But I would say for at least the teams that we have regionally, Warsaw, if I had to choose somebody to go the furthest, I would say either Carroll or Warsaw. And I wouldn't be surprised. Well, I would be surprised if they had a chance to meet up with each other. But if they did, I think this Warsaw team could find a way to play spoiler, quite simply. But again, you got to get past sectionals. I don't want to make any predictions beyond that.
Absolutely. And this sectional is competitive enough that I think you have to at least take it seriously with this sectional because of Northridge and then Elkhart as well. And then Elkhart could be in the championship game, if I recall. So that could be interesting as well. The thing with Warsaw, and I think that's going to be the key thing going into the state tournament, is their serving. When Warsaw serves the ball extremely well, they are incredibly difficult to beat. So that is something to keep an eye on with Elkhart throughout the course. Warsaw throughout the course of the postseason. Joe, my last question to you is: as we get to the playoffs, are there any things you're looking forward to the playoffs, or any headlines that you have going into the state tournament that maybe it differentiates from last year's state tournament?
I think it's kind of the story of same as it ever was, same as it could have been is really the headline that I like to use at this point. I think, of course, yes, everyone is I don't want to say yapping, but everyone's looking at Carroll continuing to try to go for the undefeated, unblemished, undeniable season. We've seen that happen in different states at different levels. Last year, I had the opportunity to call a team who did exactly just that at Class 2A in the state of Missouri. going 41-0, didn't drop a game, didn't drop anything, quite simply. And I think Carroll doing that at a higher level is certainly something that a lot of people are going to be keeping their eyes on. I'm going to be keeping my eyes on that too. But I also take a look at some of the lower classes in the meantime. I think obviously the sectional coming up at Concordia that we'll have next week will certainly be one to, it could basically be a battle of three teams, but I wouldn't be surprised if we did get an upset or two, if we did maybe get a Garrett knocking off Concordia potentially, or an East Noble sneaking away over Angola. I think those things are certainly possible. I don't want to say they're probable by any stretch, but something that you could want to keep your eye on. Class 2, I mean, the sectional with Woodland, South Adams, I think, and Blackhawk Christian, I think that one is going to be must-see TV. I think the Warriors have that edge in my eyes, but it's very difficult to try to beat a team 3 times. We've only seen that happen once with a regional team this season, and that is with Homestead and Belmont. And I think, too, whoever wins that game has a really good chance to at least get a win or two in regional play. But again, we don't know what's going to happen with those teams because we don't know the draws. We won't know the draws for those until after next Saturday. So I think it's really just, you don't want to try to over speculate what's going on in postseason play, because the second that you do that, expectations are completely skewed. People are not going to go in with the same mindset as before. You cannot be lax in any set. Every point counts, whether you're facing off against a 33-0 team or an 0-8 team. And I think that's something that any team listening or watching, every point matters. Don't listen to us. Just go out, play your best game, make yourself proud. Seniors, this is what you've got. Go for it. Unless you've got to commit to college, add it more to the highlight reel. I think, this is a special time of year for everybody. And I think, we're going to be in for some really good treats coming up next week.
If there's one thing we can ever take away from this is don't listen to us when it matters most in the playoffs,
Yes,
because
please don't.
at the end of the day, it's about the teams actually winning the games when it matters, not us talking.
Absolutely. No.
All right, Joe, I'm going to turn you loose here. So good luck this week and good luck in the call next week at Concordia. A very interesting sectional for those out there. So
absolutely.
Yeah,
thank you so much. Thank you, Sam, and good luck to the rest of I know you've got a big run coming up in the next couple of weeks as well. So keep up the good work.